This is the Entrepreneurs vs. Coronavirus podcast with your host, Ryan Kononov.
We're in an unprecedented time right now. As coronavirus continues to spread throughout Canada, and in fact our world, we're starting to hear some remarkable stories of how businesses are rapidly evolving and innovating within their space. In this next interview, I had the opportunity to speak to Parker Ray, who is the Director of Operations and the original co-founder of WorldSpec.org. What I want you to listen for is how he saw an opportunity to innovate at a time where the general acceptance for online learning just wasn't there. Today, more than ever, everyone is buying into online learning, and so Parker talks about how they're taking this opportunity to meet the needs that exist today through discounts, payment plans, and some alteration to how they would normally service their customers. In particular, listen to how he talks about some of the challenges they're facing with their own people who are already working from home and are now struggling to get full days of work in at a time when they're busier than they've ever been. Parker, welcome to the Entrepreneurs vs. Coronavirus podcast. So just to start out, why don't you tell me a little bit about WorldSpec for those that haven't heard of you?
Yeah, perfect. So WorldSpec became the world's first ever online training company in our niche sector, which is called non-destructive testing. Essentially, we use technologies that are similar to the medical field, like ultrasound and x-rays, to look at the inside of metal, things like airplane fuselages, trains, pipelines, and we can see inside of them and look for cracks or defects that are maybe just beginning to happen, and hopefully get to those and get those fixed before something big really does happen and they crack or break off. So my father was a trainer in that sector my whole life, and he traveled all over the world, and we didn't want to do that anymore. So he and I and my family together, we were thinking of other ideas, and we said, we've got this great 56K modem here. Why don't we look at doing some online training? And so we built this online training, and literally we were just shifting over to DSL or cable modem. That's about how long ago it was.
Wow.
And we built this online platform, and it was incredibly basic. It was basically like a textbook online, almost like a PDF online. And we started selling this training in my father's industry, and it started taking off pretty significantly. However, as with most things in a disruptive industry, there was significant pushback. We had a lot of people that were in their 50s and 60s in the industry, older men that didn't think it was possible to do online training. And so we sort of showed them otherwise. But essentially all they would do is if my father went to a classroom to teach, he would bring a PowerPoint and just stand up there and read a textbook or a PowerPoint. And so there was really no reason why this couldn't have been taught online, but there was just kind of a stigma, I guess, with online training, which to some degree in some industries, there still is that stigma that the training is not as good or not as effective as traditional classroom training. So basically, in a nutshell, that's how we got to where we were. We ended up kind of exploding because we were the only ones, and there was a new generation of millennials that were moving in to take over the industry, and they obviously wanted training now, and they wanted training immediately and at their fingertips. And so that really helped us, and we eventually sold to the largest NDT company in North America, and I've been working for them since then.
Wow, that's an awesome success story of from startup to exit, and are you still involved on sort of an earn-out? Is that your involvement, or are you what does your role look like today?
Yeah, so today, I mean, our earn-out is come and gone now. I've been with the company, this newly acquired company, for 7 years now, and I'm still an entrepreneur at heart, and they kind of let me run it a bit like an entrepreneur. I have technically a boss, but in terms of the day-to-day operations, I can kind of do what I want with it, except when I need money or funding, then it's, there's a lot of bureaucratic red tape that goes on to get anything. But in terms of operations, I can kind of run it as I want and make my own hours and just be responsible for it that way. So I still feel a little bit of entrepreneurial stuff in me, and I really want to get back out there and explore what else is out there. But for now, I've been happily employed
Very cool.
with them.
And so let's just for those that are listening, tell us a little bit going back to where you started. Like, what did a course look like on your website back when people were connecting to the internet on dial-up modems or through ADSL or DSL connections? What did it look like then? And fast forward to today, what does a course on your platform look like today?
Yeah, so initially, literally what we did was scan textbook pages from my father's textbook and upload those to the internet. And we had the legal commercial rights to sell them. So we just literally had scanned pages of text, and we
Wow.
just put it through there. And so today we're now in a position where we create dynamic courses with video and drag and drop features and making users engage through clicking or through browsing somewhere, typing in answers, doing different activities that keep them as engaged as possible. We use a software called Articulate Storyline, and that's basically where we're at today. But we have to start looking to the future because that's no longer good enough either.
Right. And so your whole website today, there's a term for that. It's called an LMS, right? And so just as someone who's maybe never gone through learning online, like what is that experience like through your website today as far as signing up, registering for a course, and how does it compare to in-class physical training that would be comparable to to someone who's looking for an NDT certification?
Yeah. So the online process is, pretty similar to any other website. You go on, you make an account, register for courses, you have access, and then you can log in whenever you want. And it's essentially a self-study program, but you are given this sort of an instructor or mentor that has 30, 40 years of experience that's available whenever you want to ask them questions. But essentially it's the same process as you would normally see. With regards to the second part of your question, what was that again?
Someone who's looking at two different options. So if they are looking
Right.
at learning online versus learning in class, like what is that experience like through your website today?
Yeah, so ours is a lot more condensed, obviously. When you learn online, you can learn much faster than in a classroom, where an 8-hour day would be filled with a couple lunch breaks, a couple recess breaks, some introduction to who each person is, an introduction of the instructor, all these other different things. You can actually just sit there and deal with just the material. So you can fly through it quite a bit quicker. In the classroom setting, you're maybe going to get to meet new people. I guess that's kind of the big advantage there. You're going to meet new people probably in the same industry as you, maybe network a bit. You don't really have that networking luxury with the online, at least the way we've got it set up now. So that would probably be the advantage to the classroom. But if you like to just get your training done and you're a self-starter and a self-learner, then the online is by far the way to go. You save on, hotel accommodations, you save on paying to go to a classroom training because they have to pay for the building, they have to pay for the physical instructor to be there for 8 hours a day. So you're able to save a lot of costs, and we're able to save a lot of costs and push those off to our clients at the end of the day as well.
And of course learn around your own schedule, perhaps work or school or home, or in a time like this where people are sort of confined to their four walls at home. It's a great opportunity that gives them some flexibility, yet the ability to keep learning.
Of
That's
course, yeah, the flexibility and the convenience is probably the biggest selling point for online training, especially in, today's situation that's very anxious and uncertain. They can do it whenever they find time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
great. So let's talk a little bit about your customers. So today, who are your customers? What is that demographic like today? You mentioned millennials. What else? Who's a good candidate for worldspec.org?
So we have all kinds of people from all different industries. To give you some background, like some of our larger clients are Boeing, for example. We have Bombardier, Northrop Grumman, a lot of large companies, SpaceX,
Oh, wow.
Tesla, all these companies have used our training. And the reason they use the training is because it's far more, again, convenient for them. But the bigger thing is their employees don't have to take time off work to do the training. So they're not losing that employer for 1 to 2 weeks to go and take an in-classroom training course, and also paying for that person's accommodations and food and lodging and what have you. This way, the student can do it on their own time, and they're not losing them in the workforce.
Great. And how many staff, like what does it take to run your business? How many people are involved in the office, remote, in the field? What does that look like?
So as of today, we really have about a team of 8. There's myself, a business development person, an administrator, and then some instructors. We're kind of all remote. We work from our own homes all over the world. We have an instructor in Egypt. We have a couple people in the US, some people all across Canada right now. So one of the more interesting things about what we do and what I do is trying to learn that balance of leadership and trying to lead people completely remotely all over the world at different time zones, and making that all sync together properly.
Wow. So in a time like this, and we'll get more into this later, but hasn't really impacted your people. They're used to working from home, and this is sort of just, they haven't skipped a beat. This is just another day in the life of a WorldSpec employee.
Well, yes and no. I think our biggest downside in this is that we need to be better with our infrastructure, because we're getting such an influx of people coming in now that all of the other classroom training centers are beginning to close, that we have to also keep in mind, or I have to keep in mind, that all of my other people that work with me have families at home now too, and especially those with children at home, they're not in school. So where I could have gotten 8 hours of solid productivity from this person before, now I may only get 3 or 4, because they have a family as well to attend to. However, we're getting a lot more people coming to the site, because we're basically the only ones out there offering this training to them right now from all over the world. So it's kind of a difficult balance that way. The struggle for us right now is more internally, trying to make sure everybody isn't overworked, but make sure that they're still able to work enough, and balance having to deal with, like I said, everybody being at home, and everybody kind of being afraid, and all of those kind of things, especially the people that are overseas in Egypt. um, their situation is not great at the best of times, and so with the coronavirus hitting that area as well, it's even more difficult to make those things.
And so talk to me a little bit about your revenue model. Are you subscription based? Do you sell courses as it a product? What are you actually selling, and how does that revenue model look today?
So in terms of strategy, we're a low-cost provider. We do have a couple of competitors. They offer a significantly higher product. They do all video training. Ours is more interactive. But we try to be the low-cost provider, and especially now what we're doing is we're opening our doors a bit and actually discounting a lot of the prices, so that these people that are dealing with the coronavirus and still need to get that training in, we want to accommodate them and be available to them. I think the biggest opportunity for us in terms of revenue models right now is accessibility and availability. If we can be available for these people at all hours of the day and offer incredible customer service, we're going to gain them for the long term. So even if we're just barely breaking even on a course or something, it's worth it both for us and for them. In terms of the revenue model, like I said, we're a low-cost provider, and we match everybody's price that comes to us. And we really feel good about our course. We believe that learning in an interactive and engaging way is better than just video training, where you're just sitting there and watching a movie of something, because you could fall asleep during that movie. You're not physically getting involved and having to pay attention.
Right. And so when someone comes and buys your a course, are they just buying that one course, or do you sell a recurring subscription that they opt into, or what is that revenue model
Yeah,
look
sorry,
like?
I sort of forgot
Oh,
about
that's
question.
okay.
It's just a course by course basis. We're not subscription at this time.
Okay.
They could buy one course, or we do have like 2 course, 3 course, 4 course specials. But generally it's a course by course basis. And a lot of what we do for these bigger clients like Boeing is we'll sell them course credits, so that maybe they'll buy 20 course credits at a time, and then they can simply just call or email us and say, I'd like to assign 2 credits to these 2 employees for these 2 courses, and then we deduct that off of their account. And so they now have 18 credits left. And so that's kind of our big play on that.
Okay. And so with that said, how much of your business is repeat business then? How can you share that? What percentage of your revenue is, Boeing coming back and buying more courseware or more credits?
Yeah, so we have very high repeat business because in our industry, taking one course and having one method in our industry is not enough. So because we offer 30 different courses, we quite often have people coming back to then take, 3, 4, 5 more courses over the course of the next few years. So it's a very high repeat customer basis.
Awesome. So you started this company long before online learning was popular. You shared a little bit about what that looked like within your industry. Tell us, where did the idea even come from?
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying, my father was a trainer worldwide, and as we were growing up, he was always gone. He was in Amsterdam and Dubai and Portugal, all over the place doing training, and he really got sick of being away from his kids. So one night we were actually all sitting around in a hot tub, and we just were brainstorming ideas, and we came up with the idea to do online training, and that was that. We kind of committed to it.
The rest is history.
Yeah, my uncle happened to own a website company as well as a server hosting company, so he was able to kind of help us out with bootstrapping some of the initial development and funding that we needed for it, and then we just went from there with it.
Back of the napkin business plan.
Yeah,
Classic.
exactly,
Love it.
exactly.
So how does the acceptance for online learning, and just to give us a bit of a time horizon here, when did you start the company?
2003 was when we, I guess, formally started it.
Okay. So 2003, online learning was just a new thing in its infancy. We all know about it today, and especially in this time, we're seeing literally every school out there is scrambling to find ways to take their curriculum online. When you look at your industry specifically, what's the acceptance like today for online learning in the NDT world?
It's still not close to 100%. We still have a lot of people that are object to it. They don't think that the training is sufficient. Basically, these courses that they attend are generally 1 or 2 week courses. However, the material that's in them, if you look at a PowerPoint slide and you just sat there and went through that PowerPoint slide with audio attached to it, you could finish that in about a 7 or 8 hour day. And so putting that online and condensing that online is therefore, in their opinion, reducing a 2 week course down to a 1 8 hour day of sitting and watching online learning. And so they can't equate where typically they would have somebody take 2 weeks. Now they're only taking 1 day. And so for them, there's a loss in the translation there. There's something missing, even though the same body of knowledge is being covered throughout the curriculum of the course. So that's been one thing that still is a thorn in our back and still an obstacle that we, may never overcome. However,
now, do you see that changing right now? Like in this time?
Yeah, so that's the thing with COVID and coronavirus. Evidently, everybody seems to be throwing that by the wayside and just wanting to get their guys trained and getting them out there or at least giving them something to do that's productive in this anxious time.
So let's jump into that. Let's talk about coronavirus. What were your immediate thoughts when coronavirus and COVID-19 started to hit the news?
My immediate thoughts were fear. I had just had a baby, so he was only about 1 month old at the time. And my wife is a pharmacist, and so we have a lot of friends that are in the medical field, and it sounded very scary to me, who has, almost no background or full understanding of what it was when it first came out.
Which is most of us.
Yeah. And so just, you fear the unknown and you fear that uncertainty. But the other thing that went through my head was, this could be a great business opportunity for us. We're positioned perfectly. We're kind of the one industry that it has an opportunity to thrive in this situation where so many are struggling,
Mm-hmm. So before the crisis hit, what was your biggest challenge as a business?
As I kind of mentioned before, legitimacy is
Okay.
the biggest one. There's an entire baby boomer generation that's still in management and still doesn't want to accept or believe that the online training is sufficient for their employees. That's what I would probably say. We also face a challenge of staying current. We have to constantly update the material, and even the platform that we're using is highly outdated. So with the internet and with online companies, if something's 5 years old, it's about 40 years old in terms of internet technology. So paying for that and keeping that current and having a team in place that can really help with that, that's a major challenge for us.
And so when did you start to see an impact in your business as, the virus was spreading and things were blowing up in the news? Can you pinpoint a turning point for your business when you started to see the phones ringing and new signups and your sales growing?
We typically grow about 10% per year on revenue. And where we're at right now is we're up 20% already from last year after the first quarter. So that's a significant improvement for us, obviously.
Wow.
But the start of March was really where we saw the spike come in, and we were all kind of like, okay, we have to get organized. Communication has to be key because, as I said, we're all working remotely. So, we need to know when someone's going to be available here, when someone's going to be able to jump in and do this. So that all became key, and we're using, some chat features and obviously relying heavily on our phones and trying to get through that.
And so from the start of March, when you started to see this impact to now, has there been a bit of a hockey stick curve there? Has it just been consistent growth? What has that growth looked like?
It's just been consistent. I would say, honestly, it's kind of going up, kind of like the coronavirus charts are all going up. We're probably reaching that point that China was at. We're seeing where we would typically do last year in March, we did about 70,000. That's 70,000 US dollars. We're now about to eclipse about 110,000, and we still have probably close to a week left here in March. So it's really going off the walls for us, and we're excited about that, but we also are very customer centric, so we need to make sure that we're able to deliver great customer service as well.
So as you look at new customers, have you acquired have they mostly been one-offs, or have you acquired any really large contracts like Boeing or any of the larger entities, or has it mostly been people maybe going back and re-educating, taking this opportunity to learn a new skill? Do you have any ideas around what that demographic in March looks like versus what it might normally look like?
Yeah, I mean, the only big client that we really have taken in is Siemens. They're a large worldwide client, mainly in the energy sector. A lot of it, though, has been, as you've mentioned, individuals who are, taking this opportunity to work from home and try to get trained up in some stuff that they typically wouldn't have had time to do before because they're working full time and they have their family. Now, most of them aren't working at all. And some of the companies that are, good employers will subsidize them to take this training while they're at home, so that they can be more prepared when they come back out to the job site. So we're seeing mainly that situation.
And then with this change in March, have there been any specific strategies or any ways that you've adapted your business or found particular ways that you were able to innovate to capture this opportunity that you saw ahead of you? Was there anything specific that you chased after or evolved within your business?
Just infrastructure. Before we were, I guess, a little bit of a smaller business, so we were just, and we still are every day, kind of reassessing how we deal with growth, right? And how we innovate and deal with this significant growth that can come on at any time. And so we just are looking at different innovative ways to handle that, whether that be through using things like Slack or being able to offer new features to our students or our clients. Right now, we're just at a point where, honestly, we're just trying to fulfill orders and get those done. But in the background, we're trying to look at different innovative options to handle it. The other interesting thing is you have to be cautious about how much you spend and how fast you can get that innovation going, right? In most cases, especially with online stuff, development takes time, and maybe we're going to be out of this in a couple months. So if we commit, a couple $100,000 to some development, will it be worth it at the end of the day? Will we see the ROI on it if we're going to be out of it in a couple months, or will this take a year and will it be well worth it? There's so much up in the air that we're kind of still scrambling.
So you brought up a really good point, and let me dig into that a little bit. What happens if this persists 6 months? What do you see as your biggest challenge should this, go on beyond 1 month, 2 months, and runs for the better part of this year?
I mean, resources are a big challenge. We would obviously need more people, and with people, there's the challenge of having to deal with hiring and training, and having to be able to do that virtually wouldn't be ideal, but that's something that we'd have to deal with. It'd be mainly the resources in terms of human talent.
So you mentioned this a little bit earlier on when you talked about the different challenges you've had as you've ramped or had to ramp things up and respond to the influx of sales. What's keeping you most occupied? And I don't know if you can give some specific examples around where you're finding the majority of your energy is going. And then I don't know if you have some examples for your team. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, the majority of my energy right now is just trying to ensure that each of our customers is getting the experience that they need, and really customizing all of our training right now. I want to make sure that anybody that comes to this site can afford to take the training. So we are slashing prices if we have to, and we're even opting for payment plans. If somebody wants to pay 50% down now, they can get access to the course, and we just won't give them their certificate until they've paid the balance. We're trying to really work with the customer right now more than we ever have before. And so that's been my role for most of this period.
So that's really interesting when you look at the economic challenge that so many people are finding themselves in. I think, the most recent numbers were 1 million EI applications in the last week. You're adapting your product to try to capture that audience as people maybe find that they have more time on their hands, but can't necessarily afford to invest, or the company they work for is cutting back and minimizing their overhead. Again, you're catering your product in this time to that particular opportunity, which I think is really great.
Yeah, well, there's a few things. I mean, first of all, we make about a 60% profit margin, so we have wiggle room with that. But the other thing is, I believe that if we can appeal to these people now, we can have a client for life, right? And so that's a much bigger picture for us. Yes, we'll give you a course at almost cost, but we know that in our industry, one course is not going to be enough. So that person is going to come back and therefore want to take much more courses through us down the road. And that's what we're really aimed at.
So there's a recertification or continuing education component to the life of a client with WorldSpec.
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
Great. So what's next? What's next for WorldSpec? Where do you see the greatest opportunities from this point forward?
We really want to look at doing more live training, whether that be through webinars or through just having an instructor that's available 24/7, kind of like a live chat, somebody that they can just type in a box and immediately have someone there to answer their questions. So we're looking at different options for that. In addition to that, we are a worldwide training entity. However, we only operate in English. And so we're looking at scaling into different languages, which has a whole set of unique challenges of its own, because our industry is based on acronyms like NDT, and everything within the industry is based on acronyms. And so you have to have somebody with a working knowledge of our industry that's doing the translation. You can't just hire a typical translation company to come in and do your translation. So we're looking at Spanish and Chinese, and then with that comes you have to find obviously certified instructors and trainers that speak those languages and are available to communicate online as well. So those are our next approaches for sure as we get into 2020 and 2021 here.
And so what would you say to those listening who maybe are struggling in their business? There's a lot of uncertainty in the world around us right now, from a health perspective, from an economic perspective. And I should say, many of those people haven't figured out how to pivot or shift or innovate in their own businesses. So they're really struggling to figure out how to make ends meet, how to keep their business alive right now. What advice can you give those people that maybe you've learned early on, or just through the innovation that you've seen in a market that perhaps is quite resistant to it, even still?
You know what? Before the coronavirus got here, we kind of had our own virus in all of business, and a lot of that is just disruptive technology. You're seeing that Blockbuster's gone, Uber comes in and upends the cab industry. These things are all considered viruses to traditional business, and so I think anybody that's in business now really has to always have innovation at the top of mind, and also not just innovation, but infrastructure. And, how flexible can we be? How mobile can we be if the situation arose? Do we have things in place that we can turn on quickly, like a generator if we lost power, something like an emergency plan? Those should be top of mind right now in a world where every industry has disruptive technologies starting to take over.
And do you have any resources or suggestions you can make to help people find ideas or find frameworks or methodologies around idea generation or technology itself or innovation?
I mean, nothing out of the ordinary. I think looking at agile ways of doing things is obviously a good option. Going and reading books that are by experts in that industry would be ideal. But really, I've always just thought there was a fire on my ass all the time, and you just got to constantly keep taking that next level, keep going to the next step, and just constantly feeling like sitting back on your laurels is going to cost you your business. And if you always have that at the top of your mind, then innovation will find you. You'll find a way to make it work. The whole business world is going to change here once this coronavirus is done, because there's going to be so many businesses that are going to realize that they can work remotely and that they don't need 100,000 square feet of office space. Half their staff can work from home,
Well, it sounds like you have this tendency to always operate your business and your work under a bit of a mode where you always see that there's risk of that next competitor or of that next innovation that puts you out of business. Would that be an accurate assessment?
Yeah, and I believe that any entrepreneur today that's in business should be operating by that same principle.
Thanks for being on the show, Parker. What's the best way for people to reach you if they want to connect with you?
They can just visit our website, which is www.worldspec, so WORLD, S as in Sam, P as in Peter, E as in Edward, C as in Charlie, .org. Check it out, and if you're interested in the industry, give us an email, and now is the time to be buying because I'm throwing out discounts. So.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Parker. Have a great day.
Thank you, Ryan. You too.
Thanks for listening to the Entrepreneurs vs. Coronavirus podcast with your host, Ryan Kononov. For complete show notes and additional information, visit clearbridge.ca/podcast. Ryan is the founder of ClearBridge Business Solutions. To find out how investing in technology can help your business, especially during uncertain economic times, visit lifewithclearbridge.ca. Connect with Ryan on LinkedIn or on Twitter at Ryan Kononov. That's RyanKononoff. Thanks for listening.